Hi, welcome to When Songs Mean Business. I'm your host, Steph Belcher. Before we get started with today's guest, I wanted to let you know about my new Patreon community. In that group, I'm sharing worksheets, business lessons, and videos of these episodes. Last week's episode featured part 1 of my coaching session with Dutcher Snedeker, and you can find the video of that episode and the video of part 2, which is all about personal budgeting, inside the Patreon community. It's less than $10 a month to join, and you can quit anytime. And your support helps me build a team around this podcast, including an editor and a graphic designer. I also want to take a minute to thank my current patrons, Maggie, Danielle, Jackie, Mark, Abigail, and Dan, for joining me so early on this adventure. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I really appreciate that you keep coming back. So thank you. Today, I am chatting with Ashley Maietta, a singer and songwriter from Los Angeles who works in artist management, A&R, and publishing. And she has a wealth of knowledge on artist development and marketing for emerging musicians. This was a really lovely conversation about songwriting and artist development. We talk about her songwriting process, co-writing with others, how to be vulnerable and authentic in a co-writing session, especially with strangers, and the importance of publishing deals. We talk about her involvement with the Lullaby Club on Clubhouse and so much more. I hope you enjoy this episode. And again, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. You are all the best. I love hearing from you. Please send me messages, follow me on Instagram, find me in our Facebook group. I hope you have a wonderful day. So let's dive into When Songs Mean Business. Ashley, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Stephanie. It's good to be here.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I feel like this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, I know. We've been working. I feel like we just worked together yesterday, and it's been like almost 2 years at this point, which is crazy.
Yeah. That's actually a really great place to start. So Ashley and I met through a mutual friend, Ari Herstand, and we were working on the Uncanceled Music Festival.
Oh, yeah.
And that happened as a result of the pandemic. Everything got shut down. And so Ashley and Ari and another friend, Andrew, all came together to basically, it was originally as a way to help the venues, right?
It was supposed to be for everyone. So we were trying to help venues, trying to help artists, trying to help anyone who was just affected by the shutdowns, and tried to cover all the bases, actually.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a series of virtual shows, and there was tickets and tips, and it was a whole thing, right? It went on for about a month, and a lot of money. There was a lot of money raised for the artists and for the venues.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane seeing that all unfold. I don't think I slept for 2 weeks and then ended up getting sick because of it, but well worth it. And you were such an important part of that team. I mean, I don't know what we would have done without you at the end of that. So publicly, thank you for that.
Oh yeah, it was an honor to be involved. So thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah, no, it's the three of us, we're all very creative and we're good at figuring out like, how do we make this happen? What can we do to get the flow going and figure out the business side? But then as soon as it came to the actual handling of the money, we're like, oh crap, we need we need someone who knows what they're doing. And that was exactly what you are.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty common theme with creatives and musicians. They start creating, start writing, start singing, and then it takes off.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh, wait, now where am I going to put this? What do I do now?
Right. And I'm going to speak for myself. At that point, I hadn't ever dealt with that much money coming in that quickly. It was very overwhelming, just because, especially because none of us, we didn't take any part of that. Like, we didn't actually get any payout from that. Anything left over actually went to pay our accountant to deal with all of that. So, we know how to handle our own personal finances, but anything after that, it was quite a whirlwind.
Well, we made it through, and now venues are open again, and
yeah,
we're starting to sort of get back to normal, right?
Exactly. Fingers crossed it continues this way.
Yes, please, God willing. So let's back up a little bit. Start at the beginning of your music career, or even if you want to go back further than that, the beginning of when you first fell in love with music?
I remember overall kind of what started it. I don't know if I remember the exact moment, but I've been a dancer my whole life. From the time I was probably 4 years old, I was competing, and that was my life. And dance is so heavily reliant on music that, musicality is really important, and digging into obscure music. Dancers are kind of the opposite of musicians, where we're trying to find the most obscure sounding thing ever because we want, at our competitions, we want to stand out from everybody using the same song over and over again. So I was digging into finding really obscure indie music, and I was dancing around to it and found that I really enjoyed the process of creating to it. And my mom ended up, it's always the mom, my mom ended up putting me in musical theater as a kid, and I loved it. And then ended up doing choir in high school, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And eventually I started working on singing demos and writing my own songs. And then after college, got my first job in the music industry in Los Angeles. And up until that point, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. I majored in broadcast journalism in college. I minored in marketing and dance. It was a very broad spectrum kind of situation. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted something to do with dance or music. And I ended up diving into music, and I have not turned back since. It's a huge love-hate relationship, mostly love, but definitely times where I sit and question, why am I doing this? And then my answer to myself is because I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Mm.
And I kind of just dove in, started as an assistant, worked my way up, and now almost 10 years later, I'm in my current position. So it's been quite the ride.
What is your current position?
I'm the A&R and publishing manager at Crooked Paintings. I'm also an artist manager outside of that. And then I'm also a singer, songwriter in a band on my own too. So kind of cover the whole spectrum of the industry.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about Crooked Paintings.
So Crooked Paintings is an independent, what we call boutique. It's a boutique music label and publishing company. We represent artists like MKTO and Friend. We also have a whole publishing roster that we work with. We're a small company, so I kind of get to put my hands into everything in terms of what I do day to day. Every day is different. And the majority of the work is A&R work and marketing work. So setting up sessions for our writers and our artists, artist development. So helping our artists kind of choose what songs are coming out next, figuring out the branding behind it, creating a full marketing plan to go along with releases, helping to brand our writers and figure out kind of what their niches are, get them in with the right people. Pitching songs, recently diving into kind of pitching for sync as well. I used to outsource all of that stuff, but lately I've been trying to dive in on my own, sending songs in for TV and film placements, video games, advertisements, that kind of thing. We do pretty much everything, thinking outside the box all the way to the normal, day-to-day processes. So it is quite a hands-on job.
Yeah, sounds like it. We were just listening to MKTO right before. My kids really like that one song.
Oh, classic.
Yes. Thank you. I have a really hard time remembering names. I'm impressed with myself for remembering MKTO at all. But
I'm terrible with song titles, I found, which is hilarious that I'm in this business. I always have to look it up and be like, what was that song called? I could sing the lyrics, but I just can't figure out what the title was.
Yeah. You might be the same as me when, I don't know, but they all get stuck in my head. Every single song lyric I've ever heard, I think, is in there somewhere. Yeah. And so then if you're asking me to recall the name of one of them, I'm like, I don't know. How does it go? What are the lyrics? What year did it come out? Like I have to scan through the database.
It feels like that scanner.
Yeah. But my kids really like that classic song. So
it's still doing 600, 700,000 streams a day.
Wow.
It was released in 2012. It's absolutely insane. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to come back to that, but I have a question in my head I need to ask first. For the students that are listening that aren't necessarily familiar with the A&R career,
gotcha.
I know it's changed a lot. Can you kind of sum up what A&R means in today's landscape?
Definitely. Well, I'll do the best I can.
Yes, please. That's all I ever ask of anybody.
A&R stands for artist and repertoire, which is sort of like an ancient description. I mean, it's all about the artist, but the main point of A&R now is, and this is where managers and A&Rs sort of end up doing similar jobs, although I'm a strong proponent of the fact that they are different. The job of an A&R is to foster the creativity of the artist they represent in whatever way that is necessary. So it's not necessarily the day-to-day booking. It's not the nitty-gritty travel plans or anything like that. It's more focusing on their brand as an artist, whether they're a writer or a producer or an artist. It's about focusing on the writer and the artist as an overall picture. So we're looking at where they fit in the current landscape in terms of trends. We're looking at how to set up good relationships for them that help foster their creativity. So, the biggest thing is setting them up on co-writes, specifically for our artists that write, producers, and songwriters. We want to put them in the room with people that they jive with people that they, really work well with. They can create something new and original and fresh and innovative, and also kind of develop a good friendship with. That's kind of the idea, is you want to, networking is networking, but you really want to make good, solid relationships in this business. But I think the main point of A&R here is focusing on the brand as a whole, really digging into the artist, helping them pull out of them what's already organic and then elevating that. So they don't have to force anything. So they don't have to be anything that they're not, but really harnessing and diving into who they are as a creator. But, in general, depending on whether you're on the label side or you're on the publishing side of A&R, the role will differ slightly, but overall it's mainly just focusing on the artist, who they are, getting them in the right rooms and getting them to create products that they're proud of and that will go somewhere.
I love that. It feels like the most important job in the industry from my standpoint, because if you have an incredible songwriter who has a mental roadblock against being authentic, being vulnerable, there's so many situations where a songwriter has the music in their heart and in their soul, but they can't put it onto the tape the right way, like quote unquote tape. Showing my age here.
Some people still do that.
I love it. So I would love to hear some of your experiences with this particular role, and if you can tell some stories of times that went well, maybe some times that it didn't go well. I want to hear about your day, about your life.
Cool. I'm trying to think of where to start. I've worked for a lot of different, not a lot, I'm going to rephrase that. Not a lot of different companies, but the companies I have worked for have all functioned very differently and had very different artists that they've repped. I started out working for a company called New Heights Entertainment, which was a music management company, but the company managed songwriters and producers.
Okay.
And those songwriters and producers all had labels and publishing companies underneath them. So it really actually was a great place to start, because I got my feet wet in every single area I could possibly go into. We were working out of Capitol Records for a period of time. And a lot of our artists were actually international. A lot of them were from Sweden, Morocco. We had one from Belgium. It was such a cool education and just wonderful to get to know all of these people. A lot of the A&R work I did was more towards the end there. And that was actually when I signed the artist that I currently manage. I actually signed him to a publishing deal at this company before I started managing him.
What's his name?
His name's Gavin Bailey.
Okay, cool.
And he's been one of my favorite people to work with and projects to work on. So I guess I'll start there.
Yeah.
It's kind of been development from, I'm not going to say ground zero, because he already had a great following. He's very active. He has been putting out music since he was, a teenager. But we've been constantly developing and finding his brand. As an A&R, I was doing it. Now, as his manager, I'm doing it as well until he gets a label deal. But being able to get in with an artist, my favorite part of this business, as a disclaimer, is artist development. That's a really important part of this job for me that I really love. Getting in at the ground level and being able to watch him kind of discover who he is, watch the music change, watch him evolve as he gets older. He's now 23. 24, 23. I don't even know. Sorry, Gavin.
It's
I'll
all
just
the
say
same.
I'll just say 23 because I'm sure he'll appreciate that more than 24, even though it's still so young and he has so many years. But I guess one of the cool stories for me was with him specifically, seeing the rooms he started getting in, watching him kind of start to evolve as a songwriter, and then into his own artistry, he really started being vulnerable and pulling all of these really unique stories out of him that are, here's an example. There's a song we released, I actually helped him co-write, called Numb Me Bad. We released it 2-3 years ago. And the song, he struggled with addiction his whole life because he's been, he had a kidney transplant when he was, very, very young and was on medication his whole life. And he's very open about this. This isn't anything new, but he struggled with addiction his whole life. And so we wrote a song about it, somewhat specific, but a little bit vague. And after it got posted and shared, we saw all of these people commenting with their stories, saying like, this song really relates to me, especially on YouTube. A lot of people were coming and saying like, this is how I feel all the time. And, thank you for sharing this. It's nice to know we're not alone.
Oh.
And for me, that's the stuff that really validates what we do, because it's bigger. It's just bigger than the music itself. It's bigger than the artist itself. It's actually taking a personal experience and allowing it to permeate into other people's lives. That for me is the biggest reward. And so that was a story that really touched me a lot and made me feel like this is something I want to keep doing despite the hardship, despite, all the turmoil that comes with being in the music industry. So that was a really cool part of A&Ring that really, it really solidified that this is a job I want to do. Because initially he wasn't so sure about the song. Mm-hmm. He wasn't 100% sure he wanted to release it as a single. It was kind of dark. It was a little moody. And I kind of pushed him and was like, we need to do this. Everyone's reacting to this song. We need to do it. And I am really happy that it did what it did. And I, got to be a part of it.
I love that. I haven't even heard the song yet and I'm already crying. There's just something about people talking about addiction that just really gets me. I mean, I dealt with it myself, specifically with alcohol and the numbing effect, the not wanting to feel whatever feelings, whatever it sometimes it wasn't even a bad feeling. Sometimes it was a good feeling, but it just felt so strong that I was like, well, I better take the edge off a little bit and have a glass of wine, and so it's such a universal feeling. And it's amazing that somebody so young, even had to deal with that and then felt comfortable writing about it, felt comfortable playing it for you. When he wrote it, was it him and a guitar, or was he solo, or did he have a band?
It was actually him, myself, and we have a very unconventional manager to client relationship, but it works for us. But it was myself, him, and a producer, Trevor Muzzy, who is incredible. And I worked with him at my first job, and we happened to just become friends and have worked together ever since. But we all wrote it together, and we've all, I guess, had different experiences with addiction and mental health, and we all kind of have varying degrees of what that means. But coming together and being able to write that and pull that out, it was an awesome experience in a weird way. And not to say it's awesome to have to deal with that, but getting to relate to other people and see how you can connect with them, even if you haven't gone through the same thing. That's kind of the whole beauty of the creative process. But also the releasing process. I mean, I completely understand why he was so hesitant to do it at first, because it's a very vulnerable song. It's very dark, very honest. And I just tried to coach him through it. Like, I know it's going to be okay. I know this is a lot for you, but this is amazing. And I feel like people need to hear it.
I love that. Thank God for people like you who help.
Well, thank God for people like him and you and everyone, because you're all doing amazing things.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
getting deep right off the bat.
Yeah, here we go, you guys. This is not a small talk conversation here.
No.
Oh my gosh. I want to hear more about your songwriting process, to be honest. So tell us a little bit about your performing. What groups have you performed in? Do you ever perform alone? Who do you usually write songs with? Those are like the three things that I'm curious about in this moment.
So for the last, oh man, wait, I gotta look. I have a ring that has the date on it because I'm super cheesy like that.
Oh, that's sweet.
2015. So I think that makes it almost 7. Wow. I think it's almost 7 years to the day, actually.
Wow.
I've been in this group called Lucy. It's a trio, LUCI. And the first night we all met, we started this band. It was
The first night.
Yeah, March 12th, 2015. It's literally on my finger.
That's amazing.
And we put our first gig a week later and made $5 each. So it was
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have a picture with all of our $5 bills.
I love it.
But 3-part harmony, guitars, piano, very like folky pop, a little bit country thrown in there. So we've been doing that. We kind of broke apart just before the pandemic and are kind of in this sort of stage of we're not really sure what the next step is, but we did everything from playing, 5-person rooms all the way to we opened for Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo on tour.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so we went to Detroit. We played in Detroit at the Soundboard at the I forget what casino that is. So we traveled all over opening for them, and that was a crazy experience. Was just taking this little thing that we created and performing to, I think at one point it was 1,500 to 2,000 people in a room. We also did these festivals where there were 11,000 people watching, which was a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Yeah. And so we wrote all those songs together, 3 of us. Sometimes one of us would bring a song in and we'd all finish it together. But that was a songwriting process I was used to for a while, was just 3 people coming together and working on things. I was also and have also done a lot of co-writes with other people, usually a producer and another songwriter sometimes too. And I love writing for other artists. I love being able to tap into kind of what they're going through and try and pull something out that way. That's actually one of my favorite things to do, I'm realizing.
I love it.
I think it takes the pressure off of me having to be, but I also write by myself a lot. And I'm actually working on a solo project for myself that I want to try and mainly pitch through sync platforms and try and get, placements for. I don't necessarily want to be a signed artist. I've just had these songs laying around and I think they deserve to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. So process really just kind of starts with whatever the situation is, whether it's myself or a room. It changes every time. But, specifically there's one song I've written called Hot Air Balloon, where I was looking around my room trying to figure out like, okay, what can I draw inspiration from? And right in front of me was a map of the Hollywood Bowl, because I had just been there for a show. I just gone there for a show. And I realized the whole shape of it looks like a hot air balloon. And I just had that in my head. And I wrote, I think one of the favorite songs I've ever written called Hot Air Balloon. Out of that, it's going to come out hopefully this year. So that was drawing inspiration from something on a piece of paper. Numb Me Bad was something we wrote based on someone else's experience. Sometimes we start with a melody that gets stuck in our head, and similar to, I don't know, do you know Max Martin, the producer?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I watched a talk with Max Martin, and he talked about how he'll usually just start with sounds. So if he's humming a melody, he'll say nonsense words, and whatever syllable is there, he tries to formulate the lyrics around these syllables because that seems the most natural to sing. And that's why his hooks and things are so catchy, because it's natural. And then he develops intelligent lyrics on top of it. So I find that I tend to write that way too. I tend to sing nonsense words and try and match syllables. Rarely do lyrics come first. Sometimes I'll write lyrics and jot them down, but usually it's a melody before it is lyrics. And then recently I've started producing some of my own stuff too, not nearly as well as other people can, but I guess it's just part of the landscape now, is if you can do it yourself, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, honestly, so the broad spectrum answer to your question is it varies every time. It depends on who I'm with. It depends on how I'm feeling. Sometimes I'll be blocked and I won't write for months. And then sometimes I'll write every single day. So it really just kind of depends.
That's really interesting. Does it take a certain amount of confidence to trust yourself to do it differently every time? Like when it's artistic and there's no process, like if you're painting a painting, or you get out the paint, you get out the canvas, and it's kind of the same every time. You have to put the background down first, but when you're writing a song, it really doesn't necessarily have a process like that. And I wonder if that might feel intimidating for people who are just starting to write songs and they're like, I don't know if I can write this song differently from the way I wrote the last song. And how can they kind of like lean into being okay with it not being the same every time?
That's a really good question. I think I'm going to answer this in two parts. So I think the most important thing to do first is to figure out your strengths and also your weaknesses. So I've had people tell me I'm great with lyrics. I don't know if I necessarily agree. I think there are people who are better than me at lyrics. I feel like I'm good with melody, but I also know that I'm not the idea machine. The way I see sessions usually is the best sessions usually have three people, and it kind of forms a triangle. You have the idea machine, you have the constructor, and you have the editor. And the idea machine they're all just as important. So the idea machine is someone who can just come up with things like that. And they can be obscure, they can be regular, they can be anything, but it really helps guide the process because these two other people are like, all right, let's harness that, let's grab that and catch that. And then the constructor works kind of in tandem with the idea machine to kind of create this song. The editor has input too, of course, but these two are kind of the spheres of the creation process. And then the editor's the one that comes in periodically and is like, I think that rhyme would be better with this word, or I think that phrasing would be better syncopated like this. And at the end, you have this beautiful kind of song baby that the three of you can create. And that's not to say that you can't do that on your own, but I've noticed that that's kind of the formula when there are three people working together. So I think, first of all, harnessing your strengths and weaknesses, knowing who you are in a room, knowing what you can contribute, knowing what may not be your strongest suit that you can pull out of somebody else is important. And then with that, whenever you're in a room with other people, this is where things will change, because sometimes you might have to kind of step up and become something a little bit bigger than, what you normally do. Or sometimes you need to take a step back. Sometimes you need to let someone else get something out. It's a rhythm and a flow. It changes. And so the more, honestly, I think the confidence builds the more you write. And that can also be internal. The more you write on your own, the more you realize your process too. And the more you can cope with changing environments, the more you can actually adjust to things as they move. I think it's just an acquired, learned ability. It's kind of like muscle memory too. You realize it's happening without you even consciously doing it. You'll notice yourself backing off when someone's having a moment of creative output, and you'll notice yourself stepping up when there's a stall. So I think the changing environment is just practice. It's funny, you have to practice in art, but you really do.
Yeah, you do.
It's practicing. So that way it kind of like when you go to the gym and, you're trying to build up to a weight level, you're going to forget at some point the process it took to get to lifting that weight level, because it's just going to be second nature to you. But the process building there can sometimes be a little awkward and difficult, but eventually when you get there, it's really rewarding.
That was a great answer. I want to talk a little bit more about the idea constructor editor, because I really love that. And I've actually never heard that before.
Oh,
so that's really cool. Yeah. That's really cool. Are you usually one or another, or does it kind of switch depending on who you're around?
It can switch. I find that I'm usually the constructor. Like I'm like putting these in positions. I feel like I'm usually the constructor. I'm not great at spitting out ideas. In fact, I struggle with it. I can do it if necessary, but I wouldn't say it's my strongest suit. My favorite sessions are with people who are idea machines and who are great editors. Those are my favorite sessions to be a part of. So constructing is probably more my thing, is working directly with the ideas, picking out which ones I think will work, and formulating a thing off of that.
So does that involve a lot of instrumentation? Like, are you specifically thinking like this part could be a piano instead of a guitar, or like,
wow, that's a good question.
Get into the like actual construction with me. I'm curious.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's funny. I was thinking about that more in the top line sense, but I'm completely forgetting about the chord part of this whole process and the instrumentation. It depends. I play piano, and I can do chordal changes and things like that. I do find that there are other people much better than me at constructing those things, but I can think of things that kind of will, like, for instance, if we're trying to figure out the next chord to go to, I can come in and help figure that out. I'm usually good with chord progressions, but I usually find that the producer, whoever's producing the session, whether they're the idea machine or the editor, usually the producer is the editor, I've come to find.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I've come to find that if there's a producer in the room, they're usually the great editor. In addition to contributing, of course, like they do write. I don't want to discredit their creative ability because especially people like, for example, Trevor, who Gavin and I work with all the time, Trevor Muzzy, he's great at everything. So, but yeah, I can come in on the chordal stuff, but I find my strength is usually in the top line. So the melody and the lyrics and constructing those.
Cool. That's so interesting. Yeah. That was going to be my next question, was if the producers are usually the editors, it's almost like they can see it on a timeline.
Exactly. Editors see the overall picture really well, but they're also really good at getting into the nitty gritty details. They'll pick out things that you didn't even realize. Like if you ended up rhyming, my friend Mikkel the other day she was saying this about me, which was really nice, but she's like, yeah, Ashley will sometimes tell me, hey, maybe don't rhyme enough with enough. And it happens all the time. You don't realize that you get so jazzed about this lyric you've come up with, and then the editor will come in and be like, that's the same word, right?
Yeah, that's funny. My kids and I were just talking about that with the Encanto soundtrack.
Oh, it's so good.
I mean, if I get going on it, I won't stop because I'm like pretty much obsessed with Lin-Manuel Miranda at this point. But his lyricism and the way that he tricks you into thinking he's going to say one thing and then he doesn't say that thing. Mm-hmm. And you were like, you knew in your head where he was going. Yep. And then when it didn't go there, you're like, wait, what just happened? And you have to go back to the beginning, listen to the whole damn thing again, because it's like, it just leaves you with that unsettled feeling of like, in music, with all the repetition and the consistency, when they throw you off in a catchy way, it just hooks you back in and brings you back time and time again. And he is such a master of that. And he does it a lot with the rhymes. When you think it's going to be a rhyme one way and it doesn't rhyme that way. And it just blows my mind every time I hear it.
Yeah. I think it was one of the first years I was in LA. I was at this seminar, and I really wish I could remember who said this because I use it all the time and I wish I could credit them properly. So my disclaimer is this is not my original idea, but it's what I love to live by. I think the best music is 70% familiar and 30% weird.
I like that.
You want to bring them in on a familiar note, this is, I can vibe with this. I know this, and then switch it up. So they're like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And they come back because it's now interesting and different than anything they've heard before. So, and I really wish I could remember who told me this, but that's what Lin-Manuel Miranda, I can't say that too fast. That's what he does. He's a master of is his stuff. I mean, it being rappy and wordplay and flowy and stuff like that is familiar. But first of all, the fact that it's musical theater is the 30% weird part.
Yeah.
No one had really done that much in musical theater. But he really, like you said, he really gets you when those lyrical changes come in, and then you go and replay the song, which is exactly what people want you to do in the industry. They want you to replay that song over and over again.
Yeah. It gets stuck in your head and you can't remember what was supposed to come next. Right. So you have to listen to it again until you have it perfectly memorized. And then once you have it perfectly memorized, you're like, oh yeah, I'm sick of it now. I need a break.
Exactly. Oh man, especially if you have kids, I'm sure.
Yeah, they want to listen to it every day. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame them because it's that catchy. But I do have to tell them, like, no, we need to take an Encanto break today. It's been pretty much 3 straight months, and and it's really good.
But anything for 3 straight months is a lot.
Yeah. What have you been listening to lately? That's usually the question I ask last, but I'm curious now.
It was a perfect segue. My to put this in perspective, so my tastes range a lot. I listen to just about everything aside from like super death metal, just scream no melody kind of stuff. But like I'll totally get on with like, I do like metal music or hard rock and stuff like that has melody to it. But
Yeah.
to put it in perspective, yesterday I listened to Fleetwood Mac. This is all in a very long car ride to Pacific Palisades. I was listening to Fleetwood Mac. I was listening to this rapper Mims back from the early 2000s. I listened to one of his songs. I listened to, because there were a couple songs I was listening to practice for a gig. I was listening to Tovlo at one point, who I freaking love. I think she's one of the best songwriters of our generation. And I think she's so underrated. To talk about like perfect melody, lyrical combo. Oh man, who else have I been listening to? I mean, Fleetwood Mac is always a go-to for me. It's just so comforting and it's just timeless. It's always good. My roommate and I were listening to the Spice Girls the other day.
Nice.
And then, I mean, all sorts of new stuff. There's this kid, Elijah Woods, that's great, who's coming out with stuff. There's Blake Rose. I was actually listening to a bunch of Friends the other day because I was catching up on their music.
I think I saw that Instagram post.
Yeah, one of them is Lucy Clearwater, and she's incredible. She's a singer-songwriter, very pure, beautiful, light voice.
Yeah, her tone is gorgeous.
Oh, it's unmatched.
It's like angelic.
It is. And Madison Malone is another one who has a really angelic, beautiful tone, really great pop writing too. So vulnerable and unique and just heartwarming. There was my friend Sam Stacy I was listening to, who is the most understated person with so much talent. And I will constantly throw that into his face because he's so great with melodies and he's a guitar whiz. And he released a new song recently that was really good. So all of that, I listen to everything all the time.
I love it. I love the listeners. The listeners make the music business go around.
It's true. Without them, we wouldn't have a business. So
yeah. I actually, one of the reasons I love following you, I follow you really closely on Instagram. Like, I think I see everything you post. No, it's great. No, it's fantastic because you're always listening to really good stuff that I've never heard of. And then it gets famous like 3 years later. And I think I started following you in like probably 2019 and I hadn't heard of JP Saxe yet.
Oh,
it was before
If the World Was Ending.
Yeah, right before that. And then when that came out, so I was really big into Julia Michaels at the time, right around when Issues came out. And then that came out right after. And I thought, oh boy, like these two together is going to be magical. And you introduced me to JP Saxe. So I'm very grateful for you.
I'm so glad. So I met him years ago. He played at Hotel Cafe, which is really well-known. I mean, it's an everything spot really, but it's a really good spot for wonderful singer-songwriters in LA to perform. But I met him playing in a Monday once, which is a Monday night showcase where artists will play 3 songs. There are like 11 artists throughout the night and they each play 3 songs. We all looked at each other and we're like, yeah, he's definitely going to go somewhere someday. He's definitely, we know this, it's not even a question. And obviously he's doing great now. So I'm super stoked for him in his career. And actually recently there's a thing I do called Lullaby Club, which was something started on Clubhouse. And we had JP on for one of our season premieres this past year in 2021. And so we were all just chatting and catching up, and it had been forever. And he was such a good sport participating in all of our weird song games that we were doing. And it was just nice to reconnect after a long time.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. 'Cause I've actually, unfortunately, never been able to listen to a Lullaby Club live because I'm pretty sure they start at midnight. Yeah. And I'm like, I always asleep by then. So tell me a little bit, and the listeners, tell us a little bit about what Lullaby Club is.
Oh, it's a very special place. It was a club started on Clubhouse by accident by someone named Axel Mansour, who is a lovely, lovely human being. And he was just singing people to sleep every night, and people caught on and joined him and joined forces, and Lullaby Club was born. and it grew into, I believe it was one of the biggest clubs on Clubhouse, or maybe one of the most listened to. I don't know all the facts on that, so I'm not going to totally verify that information, but
it was a big deal.
It was, and it just totally blew up, and it made sense because everyone needs something to help them get to sleep at night, and this happened to be the remedy for a lot of people. So we all just, there was no formula. We all just started singing together, and then he kind of built up a little bit of a formula, and we started a season 2 where we had specific hosts for every night of the week, and I hosted on Tuesdays, I believe, and we'd come up with our own kind of formula for our night. We'd play weird song games, like mine was Zillow listings, so we would look up obscure Zillow listings in whoever the guest was hometown, and we would sing the Zillow listings. And
Four bedrooms,
you have to do it very,
two baths.
Yeah, exactly, but you have to do it quietly. So we're all singing like this really quietly, and, there's a house with 2 bedrooms. Like, it's very it was hilarious. There's one house that the person took pictures of a bunch of blown up green aliens in every room. It was so fun. It was just like a night where we could all connect with each other and laugh and enjoy our time while still serving a purpose for people who want to go to sleep. We had a live event in Topanga Canyon that was really magical. It was a meditation meets quiet singing moment. It's been a really wonderful experience. I've met some amazing people, and I'm really grateful to Axel for bringing me into that, because it's been such a spirit lifter during the pandemic. And I think there are new things around the bend for Lullaby Club that I can't talk about, but we're excited for. And Axel's at the helm driving the ship with his amazing team. And there's so many people who built it up, who it became a whole endeavor, and they're awesome. So that's kind of been that. It's been a pandemic cure for sure.
I love it. I need to get into Clubhouse. I still never, because I could only get to it on my iPad for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just sort of lost track of it. Is it still like a hot thing?
I think it depends what you're going there for. It's really big for crypto. So if you ever have any crypto questions, Clubhouse is really big for crypto.
Yeah. Have you gotten into crypto yet?
I've been in it for a little while. I'm not going to say I'm a super well-versed human in it. I know enough to be able to buy and sell when I need to, but I do think there's a future for it. I'm not sure what that future is yet, but I'm hoping that it does.
Cool. Do you own any NFTs?
I don't, but it's funny. Part of my actual job as an A&R and publishing manager, we've been diving into Web3, which is NFTs and crypto and all of this stuff. And we have some ideas on how we're going to use our new releases and partner them with Web3 technology. So we'll see if that ends up moving forward and working out. But we've done a lot of research and are hopefully minting NFTs in the future. And we'll see what happens.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sort of watching it all from the sidelines at the moment, but I see my kids are 10 and 6. My bigger kids are 10 and 6. And I see how obsessed they are with Roblox and Fortnite. And it's clear as day to me that any entertainment that routes through these games that these kids are already playing, you have a built-in market for life, as long as you can keep them coming. At some point, the games that my kids play on Roblox aren't going to be cool anymore.
Right.
But it's a whole sandbox of what you can build there. And, we don't have Oculus or any kind of like virtual reality stuff at the moment, but there will be a time in the future when there's one in my house and my kids are like, Marshmallow's doing a concert in Fortnite. Can I put on the Oculus and attend? Yeah. And that's going to be so weird for me, but also like good, and my kids are very used to attending real life concerts, and they think they're too loud and there's too many people. So I'm really curious about how this is gonna flesh out for them in the future,
It's interesting. And one of the things we're constantly talking about is how Web3 technology can be integrated into the music business on an actual level. Because a friend of mine who is a really knowledgeable human in this space, who is also, funny enough, associated with Lullaby Club, but works for Downtown Music Services, he was saying, which he has a valid point, which is Web3 technology doesn't exist for the music world yet. Like any purchases of NFTs you make of music ends up being reverted into a Web2 technology. So you're sending someone an MP3 or a WAV file on the side, which kind of defeats the purpose of the whole blockchain technology, because it's,
right.
I mean, I guess there's proof of purchase, obviously, but it's not like, you know, the pictures that are integrated into the actual blockchain that follow the product. So I think until we can find an actual way of integrating them on a real solid level, it's kind of segmented right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like hacked together.
Exactly. Everything is hacked together. And that's how the whole, again, my coworker and I talk about the .com, you know, blow up in the early 2000s. It turned into something else. There was a huge blow up about it in the beginning, and it completely transformed as time went on. And I think that'll probably happen, especially with VR, especially with all the advancements in technology that are happening. I think eventually it's going to transform into something else, but I think it is good to just be aware of things, even if you're not necessarily participating in them. It's always good to kind of know what's going on. So that way, when it does happen in the future, you're not scrambling to learn everything and get used to everything. You've kind of built up knowledge over time.
Yeah. I like that idea a lot. Staying into it enough to know what's happening and know the basics. And if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to become an expert on it immediately. You don't have to like dive in and start buying real estate in the metaverse if you don't even know what those words mean.
Right. But like, it's like, yeah, it's like the music industry though. I mean, in general, trends are changing every single day. So, you know, what you know now is not going to be the same in 6 months. It's just not. So if you're, you know, it's important to do that with every industry you're working in, a part of, interested in, whatever that is. So if you're going to do that with your industry, you might as well do that with things that could support your industry as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice. I want to talk a little bit about publishing. Cool. And if you have any advice for young emerging artists, anybody who maybe has never published their work before, anything you could tell us about publishing from your experience that might make it a little bit more easy to understand or digest a little bit?
Yeah, definitely complicated. I'm still learning. I will never not be learning, which means I will always be learning. But things change every day. But on a basic level, my thought process behind, after working in this for like nearly a decade, which still blows my mind, I feel like I'm a huge proponent of publishing deals if you're ready for them. A lot of people will say, don't sign to a publisher, don't sell your soul, don't do that. I understand that mentality because a lot of people have been burned by publishers in the past. What I have come to find is that's usually a result of them not being ready for a publishing deal. There's a certain level, people will disagree with me on this. My philosophy is it's 50-50 on both sides. Some people will say it should be 70% the artist, 30% the publisher, but I believe it's, and that's not to say the deal form. I'm not saying all deals should be 50-50 deals. I'm just saying that the percentage of effort, I want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah. Like it should be a partnership, like an even partnership.
Right. The artist needs to be as hungry as the publisher, because if the artist is hungrier than the publisher, they get left behind. If the publisher is hungrier than the artist or the writer, nothing's going to get done. I've experienced both. I've seen both happen. I've also seen really wonderful 50-50 working partnerships, and I'm in a lot of those now. And it's amazing what happens when two parties who are equally passionate come into play and work together. It creates really amazing things. And I think the way you know you're ready is when you have your own connections you can bring to the table. And the way you do that is you just work with everybody you can. You build your skill set. You start at the ground level. You can't have any pride. Like there's so much pride in this industry sometimes that it blows my mind, because it's not productive. You have to check your ego at the door, work with whoever you possibly can, regardless of their cuts. There are some incredibly talented people who don't have cuts yet. And they're going to be the next Max Martin or the next, Brett McLaughlin. They're going to be the people that are pushing this industry. So work with however many people you can, be hungry, be good to your mental health, but don't succumb to your mental health either sometimes. Like push yourself a little bit to a healthy degree, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard to work that much with no reward, but you're going to get there. I'm going to say, if you have the talent and the drive, you need both, you're going to get there. And so if you work with as many people as you can, build up your song catalog, write 100 songs and pick 10 that are great. And once you're ready, once you've created a foundation around you, then you can approach publishers. And a lot of times publishers will come to you by that point. And that's always the best thing, is when a publisher approaches you about signing you, like a publishing A&R, that's how you know that you're in a good position. And they'll find you. we have our ways of finding people, which sounds really frightening, but I promise it's not.
It's just listening, right?
It's listening, and it's digging up contact info, which is about 20% of my job every day. Yeah. Build up your catalog, get to a point where you know enough people that if you sign a publishing deal, you're bringing something to the table. And then the publisher is going to bring their connections to the table. They're going to set you up with people they think you'll work great with.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute. So what if an artist is listening to this and they know they want to sign a publishing deal, they have 20, 30 great songs that haven't been released yet. What can they expect a publishing company to do for them?
The whole point of a publisher is to expand your network. It's also to help you collect money. That's a really important part, because there's money that they can collect that's really difficult for you to collect on your own when you have releases, because they have relationships with, the mechanical publishing side, which they now thankfully have companies that can do that for indie artists and indie writers, like Song Trust. But you're going to have a lot better luck collecting all of the money you're owed having a publisher. So that is a big perk. But they're going to expand your network. They're going to bring in people they think you're going to work great with. They're also going to pitch the songs that you've written. They'll help put you into artist sessions, which are really important now, because a lot of the songs that get written in actual artist and writer rooms will be the ones that get pitching. Songs is a lot harder now that don't have artists attached to them, just because so many artists want to be a part of the writing process now and actually are songwriters themselves.
Oh, interesting.
That's kind of how the landscape has changed a lot since, even 10 years ago, there were a lot of artists that weren't writing their own songs. And now artists really want to be a part of the process, which is understandable because it's more money for them and it's more personal to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, publishers really, it's going to do two things: expand your network and help you collect your money. And both are very, very valuable as long as you're ready for it and you're hungry and you're with the right publisher and the publisher's excited.
Awesome. That's super good advice. I think it would be really fun to work for a publisher.
I really like it. It's one of my favorite things about this industry, because it's the song creation process. It's getting it at the ground level. And, we had this client signed to us, still signed to us, who I've been there since he was brought in, and being able to just watch the growth. He's done so much of it on his own as well. Like, I'm not even going to take credit for a lot of the things that he's done, because he's so wonderful at making connections, because he's a wonderful person to be around. He's fun. He's so fast in the room. He's got ideas for days. But we've also been able to kind of connect him with people that he wasn't connected with before. And we talk every day. I don't think there's a single day that passes that he doesn't communicate with myself and my boss.
Wow.
So that's what happens when you have a good publisher to client relationship, is you really create a good dialogue. You're working together. There's a common goal, and that's what you want to do.
That's fantastic. I love it.
So don't hate publishers, just the bad ones.
Yeah. There's term limits on publishing deals, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like in perpetuity.
It's not. However, there are deals that are very sneaky that I've seen. This is me coming from the artist perspective now. There are deals that have a lot of option periods. And if you sign a deal with a lot of option periods and you don't recoup your balance, so you can get an advance when you sign a publishing deal. Most people take one, but it's recoupable, which means you have to pay it back once your songs get placed and you make money, or if you just pay it back. But most people don't have the money to just give back.
Sure.
So if you're not recouped by a certain option period, if your deal is worded in a certain way, you're going to be in that deal for a very long time. So if there's any advice I could give anyone, it's get a good lawyer. And that goes against that goes against me as a publisher, because as a publisher, lawyers make my job more difficult, right? Because, which again, it's good and bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Lawyers are going to fight for their client. So as a potential client, I'm like, that's what you want. And as someone who just wants to get the deal done and start working with this person, I'm like, oh, this is such a drawn out lawyerly process. So I'm very conflicted, but I would say the best advice I could give anyone is when you're ready to sign a deal, get a really good lawyer who's detail oriented, who looks at your contract. Otherwise, you can get stuck in that contract for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that is great advice. I love teaching about the fact that publishing started by songwriters printing sheet music and literally licensing it to singers to make a record.
Yeah.
Or sing it live on the radio. And that was it. That was, I mean, at one point when these laws were written, that was it. Was
right.
If you wanted to hear music, you listened to the radio or you made it yourself. And
it's changed a lot.
It really has. And again, hacking things together, trying to put these laws in place that make sure that everybody is getting the credit that they're due and the money that they're due, and that they are allowed to retain the rights or not retain the rights, whichever way it's going to go. It's all so complicated. I don't expect anybody to have any of this stuff memorized or like these publishing laws are so complex. I don't want any student to think I could never do that because it's too complicated. Like, yeah, it's complicated. Even the smartest lawyer in the world doesn't have it all memorized. They have references.
No. And that's why this business is all about collaboration. Everyone's competing with each other, but they all need each other because no one's gonna be able to do everything perfectly. It's good to have knowledge of as much of the industry as you can, but you need to work with people who specialize in different areas. Same thing as songwriting, just that little pyramid we were talking about earlier. Like on a very ground basic level, you just want to work with people who can add to your process, who have different strengths than you. So the song itself becomes bigger than you.
Yeah.
And so and then if you start working with people who specialize in different areas outside of your own scope, that makes you a bigger entity. And that's what you want to become. It sounds very inhuman to become an entity, but that's kind of this business. When you stop being just a human and you become a whole picture, that's when you're really succeeding, because you can actually make moves in different directions and you can do different things that you want to do. It's not just going to be songwriting. It might be singing. It might be lipsticks. It might be clothing. It might anything.
Yeah.
Becoming an entity really expands you, and doing that, you have to work with other people.
Yeah. Do you have any networking advice for shy, introverted people?
I hate networking. So my friend and I are actually working on building the anti-network right now.
Nice.
An event for people in our industry to come to where we can just hang out and not network, but also network at the same time, where it's not stuffy. It's really just fostering creative connections with people. Try and make friends. Don't make business connections, because people are going to see right through it really fast. If you don't connect with someone, there's going to be someone else who does the same thing that you connect with more. It's important to know people and to be cordial and work with them. But the most important thing I've found is really foster your connections, because life is about relationships. And if you have a bunch of really surface level relationships, it's really not going to get you anywhere, and it's not going to bring anyone any kind of benefit. My favorite working relationships are with people that I could go grab a drink with and just text and say, I've had a freaking hard day. Do you want to go grab a beer? And that's when the best creative brainstorms happen anyway. I mean, that's how Ari, Andrew, and I started Uncanceled. Is Ari and I were sitting together one night, frustrated, just hanging out, and had this whole dialogue about creating this. Andrew and Ari had a whole dialogue just talking one night about this. And then the three of us came together and did it.
That's awesome.
So be organic, be yourself, don't force things. If you have to work with someone you don't like, do it, but be cordial, but don't put any extra effort into it because it's just not going to get you anywhere. And meet as many people as you can. Go to shows. That's a great way to meet people, and especially now that they're coming back. Don't be afraid of cold emails. I've gotten a lot of successes out of cold emails, which I was super against for a while because
Oh, really?
I would get cold emails a lot at my first job and I wouldn't answer them because I could tell they weren't organic. You could tell they were not going to benefit both of us at the end of the day. But I've had a lot of success with cold emails in the last couple of years. So I'm very much on the side of that. You know, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I know it's hard, especially if you are more introverted. I understand that. But, you know, this whole industry is about collaboration and working together. So find the people that you like, and then eventually your network is going to grow. And it's going to grow in a good, heartwarming way, not in a terrible, cold, I'm going to send you one email a year kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of relationship. And no matter what industry you're in,
Yeah.
that kind of lackadaisical, I'm only going to reach out to you when I need you
Right.
type. It just doesn't really work.
Offer help, you know, offer
Yeah.
things that, you know, it's not always a you scratch my back, I scratch your back relationship. It's not always going to be balanced like that. But once you meet people you enjoy working with, you're not really going to care. You're going to just enjoy being like, I have this thing that I want to share with you. And I think could help your clients or what you're doing. And then eventually you'll just grow your relationship.
Yeah. Relationships come up a lot in this podcast in particular. It's really seems to be the driving force of the whole entire industry.
Well, to put it in perspective and to be fully transparent, the last 2 jobs I've had were not because I sent an application in and I saw it posted on a website. It was because, I mean, I interviewed, I didn't just get the job. I definitely interviewed, but it was because it was someone I'd worked with before who was like, I liked working with her. I want her to work with me, which I'm really grateful for. But that was how I got my jobs, which I know doesn't necessarily sound fair right out the gate, but if you're going to work closely with someone, you kind of want it to be someone that you enjoy working with.
Yeah.
You're going to enjoy working with someone who you've worked with before, you know, and you might enjoy a new person as well. It's not to say that people don't get jobs just sending in applications, but especially in this industry, the more people you've worked with, the more likely they are to watch out for you and, you know, make sure you're taken care of if you need a job or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one, I can echo this exact point for days and days. There was one agent, Tom Windish, worked in Chicago. He booked all the electronic acts. He was like the Chicago dance guy. We all loved it. Everybody loves him. And I had just finished, I worked in the music business for 10 years in marketing and venue event stuff. And I was kind of thinking about what it would be like to work at an agency. And I wasn't really sure if I wanted to or not. And somebody told me that Tom Windish was hiring and set up an interview for me. And that was so amazing. And I had just come off my first season at the tax office. And I wasn't 100% sure that I wanted to go back into tax. It didn't really feel like a great fit. This was 2009 and the economy was like a hot mess. And I met with Tom. Yeah. And I met with Tom and he was like, listen, if you don't hate taxes, you should be a business manager because there's only like 100 of them in the whole country anyway. You'll always have work and the rest of us hate taxes. So if you can stomach it and you can do bookkeeping, he was like, stay in that role. And he set me up with his business manager for an informational interview. And I went in there, we talked for a half hour, 45 minutes. He told me exactly what to learn and how to learn it. And I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing, talking. I wouldn't be talking to you because I wouldn't have ever met you in the first place if I hadn't done all that stuff. But I haven't talked to Tom Windish since. We just haven't seen each other. We haven't had any reason to talk until yesterday. He posted that he was hiring and he put it on his Instagram story. So I reshared it with this story and he wrote me back. And now we're back in touch. And it's been 13 years, and he probably doesn't remember our actual interview. It wasn't as monumental to him as it was to me. It was like literally life-changing for me.
Yeah.
But those,
though, we never know. That's the thing. We never know how we're going to touch people.
Right. And those relationships, and like, I never burned that bridge, even though, he didn't have a job for me at that
Mhm.
time. I didn't like burn that bridge or anything. And I didn't stalk him for a job afterwards. I just was like, you really helped me out. Thank you so much. And, here we are. So there's definitely something to be said for just maintaining those relationships and
Mhm.
keeping the people in your corner. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Tom's legendary. I mean, the
Yeah.
language agency is huge. So to
Yeah.
have that kind of input is, I mean, he has proven success rate, and for him to give you that advice, I'm sure, like you said, was life changing, and
Yeah.
now has set you on this path. So it's cool. I don't know him personally. He seems like a really lovely person. So I feel like you telling him and you saying that, this interview changed my life probably means something to him, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because
I
if
think
someone told me
so.
that, I'd cry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the reasons that I like doing this podcast and I like
Mhm.
teaching so much, is that it gives me the opportunity. Like, people will tell me afterwards that the words that you said, Ashley, helped them.
Oh, well,
I'm
that I'll
certain
cry.
of that. Yeah. I'll
I will
send.
cry probably.
That's good. I'll tag you in the posts. So
No,
this has
it's
been
fun.
absolutely wonderful. Is there
Oh,
anything else that you want to leave us with, or any way that people can reach you or hire you or write songs with you?
I'm on Instagram a lot, part of my job, but also just because it's kind of fun to escape life sometimes. So feel free to DM me. I'm a little bad at going through my requests. This is actually reminding me that I need to be better at that. But yeah, DM me if you have any questions. I I guess my summary of this is, as much as I can help people, the reason I got into this business, I've always said, is I want to make people's dreams come true. And I
Mm.
know that sounds corny. I know that sounds cheesy, but if I can help do that, it gives me a lot of internal satisfaction. So it really is selfish. Really is a selfish motivation. But
Beautifully selfish.
I love that you put a positive spin on that. But I really do want to help people's dreams come true. And I'll be honest and say, like, I don't ever want to put anybody down, but I want to, if I believe in someone, I want to help them. I really do. It gives me a lot of happiness to do that. So my whole goal is to make people's dreams come true, and hopefully build a life for myself that way, because I also have to eat and live in a place with a roof. So
Yeah. In Los Angeles.
oh my gosh. Yeah. So that's my goal in life. And if I can keep making moves to do that, then I will be a very happy person. And you are also doing that for people, Stephanie. So
Oh, thank you.
you are helping them achieve their goals and dreams. So it's really lovely to be able to talk to you and share that same mindset.
Yeah. I want everybody who's listening to this to know that there's no one way to success in this
Nope,
industry.
exactly.
And you might start out as a dancer and then turn into a songwriter and then turn into an A&R person and become an expert in publishing. And, if you just keep walking forward, keep taking the next step, just do the next right thing, then as you learn what your strengths are and who you work well with, the cream will rise to the top. And
Mhm.
constantly be taking stock and inventory of who's around you, what they're good at, like, try to think of that triangle that Ashley was talking about, because that's so important to always have people who are complementary to
Mhm.
your skill set. And yeah,
Yeah.
so.
That was a great summary.
Oh, well, thank you. That's my teaching gene.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. All right, Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. When Songs Mean Business is a production of Steph Belcher Business Management LLC. This episode was hosted, edited, and produced by me, Steph Belcher. Please make sure to join us in our Facebook group, When Songs Mean Business, and follow us on Instagram at When Songs Mean Business. As always, thank you to The Dropout for the break music. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful day.